right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the panel. This is what you came here to see. This is our favorite part of the show. At least I say it's my favorite part. I don't know about KV, but...
it's my favorite part, too.
Okay, I just wanted you to admit it. All right, man. So we've got a special guest, and I'm horrible at introducing people because I always forget to do it. I just get busy talking and doing other stuff. And so today in the panel, I put down in there, you can see it says Dacky Comics. I don't know if you want to go by your government or not. So you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Yes, hello. My name is Nichole Robinson. I also go by Dacky Comics, and I am based in Portland, she, her. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. And if you notice, this is an in-studio guest. We rarely get the in-studio guest. It does
We've
not
never
happen.
had in-studio guests. Why you say it like that, Dru? We've never had in-studio guests, sir.
I think long-term, man. And what I'm saying, like somebody could be watching this later on down the line and they could be binging us. And so if they're binging it, I just want them to know that this doesn't... you know what? I don't have to explain myself to you.
Man. Yeah, thank you for having me over to the in-studio.
Yeah, you still did.
One, I miss people so much. And two, not only do I miss people, but also my downstairs neighbor must be a DJ or something, and he's not a good one. So
yeah.
I cannot promise good sound quality from my apartment. I'm way happier to be here.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the deeper conversation that we want to have with you about everything, just to give everyone a background, I met you at Rose City Comic Con, and I don't think I actually met you at Rose City Comic Con. I filmed you at Rose City Comic Con doing a panel, and from there I was completely impressed by you and everything that you kind of covered. And then you were in the short UnCaged documentary that I put together, and which the full length version is coming out. Of course, the subject matter's changed a little bit. So I would love to say that you're going to be a person that's a friend of the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into comics and how you got into this world where I've met you?
Please, I would love to be a regular on your podcast. Just hit me up. I don't live far. And I love seeing people. So I got into comics. I've always loved comics. I want to say I got into it because when I was younger, I really liked Batman the Animated Series and a whole bunch of cartoons, comic-based cartoons. I loved it. I've always loved cartoons. And eventually I got a little bit older and I started working in daycares. And I would be around children who also loved comic cartoons. And they would, do imaginative play with other kids. And they would act out these scenes. But they would exclude kids of color from them because they didn't know of any heroes that look like those kids. So, me being historically a comic fan just kind of broke my heart. I was just like, this little black girl wants to play comic or wants to play heroes. And they were just like, there's no black girl heroes. This happened in daycare. A whole bunch of 4 and 3-year-olds. And even the white boys, they had they had get-ups. Like one was the Hulk, one was Captain America, one was Batman. They came into daycare in full get-up. And the little girl was like, hey, can I play with you? They're like, we don't know of any black women superheroes. And, of course, me as a daycare teacher, I come up, try to convince them to let this little girl play. And I was just like, well, what about blank-a-blank or blank-a-blank? And I realized that really quickly I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like once you get past Storm or, Bumblebee or, somebody else from the cartoons. I'm not talking about his kids who have historically been comic fans. I'm talking about who are you going to see on Disney XD, at least in the early or 2000s or the 2000 teens anyway. Like, if you're watching Disney XD, which is comic cartoons for kids, who are they going to be exposed to? And I think around that time was when I was like, I draw. Maybe I need to make some comics, because I am watching the effects of poor representation, like hurt feelings and ruined play in the daycare. And it breaks my heart to see like little white boys look at a black girl and be like, you're gonna slow me down, or you're useless to me because I don't see you represented in media. And clearly she didn't. And I want to say, like, after the scene went down, she was so devastated. I was just like, I can like force them to play with you. I'm a teacher. I can do that. And she's just like, and she's just like, nah, it's okay. I'll just go draw. And I was like, no, please, you could be a hero too. Yeah. So like, after that, it has been my prerogative to like make comics, start doing stuff like that. And ever since then, I have been drawing. Also, shout out to anime. Like, not only is that's just like my experience with Western comics pretty much. I also did get into comics through manga and manhwa and all of that. That's also a very familiar medium for me, reading a whole bunch of manga.
So So tell us, because I'm new to this to some extent. What exactly? Give me a definition on what that is.
Of anime?
Well, yeah. Let's go, because I have a loose idea on anime, but like when you say manga and what was the other word you said?
Manhwa.
See, there you go. Yeah. I have no clue.
No problem. So, I want to say Japanese animation and Japanese comics are called manga, and same thing with manhwa, except for manhwa or mana is Korean comics. And it is captivating to young kids and preteens and teenagers, and also adults, like people of all ages, especially kids of the 90s, kids of the 2000s are really interested in anime. And it's getting a whole bunch of kids into art. It's getting a whole bunch of kids into learning Japanese. It's getting a whole bunch of kids into comics. And Western comics, honestly, might be an afterthought for a lot of these people, because anime is so prevalent. You can find it anywhere. You can find it on YouTube. And it's so, I want to say, it's so grandiose. Like, it really does a great job of capturing the angst of your teenage years, or the wild imagination, or just the high action stuff that you crave as a young kid, and or the high fantasy stuff that isn't, elves and orcs, but a different kind of high fantasy. Like the target audience is wide and large. Like, the net for the target audience of anime is huge. And when I was younger, I was watching Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls and this and that, but I was also consuming all of the anime I could get my hands on. Every day after school, I went to Borders when that was still a thing. And like, I would just go up and down the manga aisles and sections and just like grab anything. It didn't even matter what the title was. If I had heard of it, I would pick it up and I would read the whole thing and then put it back because I had no money. But that's what I did after school every day. Go read manga until it was late, and then I would go home.
So let me let me ask you about representation in that. Like, so is it more of an emotional representation is why, like you would say young people gravitate toward that? Because um, are there people of color? Are there white people, like, or is it, or when I say people of color, are there black people in anime? Are there white people in anime? Or is, because I have no clue here. So for my idea, I'm thinking it's just Japanese people or Asian people. So
Okay, this is a very broad, um, a very broad generalization of the literature, and I don't want to speak for any type of anime, but basically for anime, the target audience is Japanese people, and they like to put in what Japanese people like to see, which is why I want to say a lot of protagonists have like that blonde-haired, blue-eyed kind of thing, like Naruto or Goku when he goes Super Saiyan, or all sorts of different animes have a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Back in the early 2000s and the 2000 teens, a lot of anime was very blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and or just Japanese coded. But nowadays, creators of anime, which is basically just short for animation, they just shortened it to anime. They put more representation in it because they're starting to realize the more representation they have in their anime, the more it will sell, because black and brown and indigenous people love anime so much to the point where, like, I saw like somewhere south of the border, I think this was in Mexico, they were like showing new I want to say Dragon Ball Z episodes on the side of a building. Like, it was being projected in the side of a building, and there were just people in the streets watching this new episode of Dragon Ball, whatever season is out, and they were like all screaming together, and it was crazy, and it's so exciting. Like, we love anime, so yes, anime is a big part of it.
I believe anime is very influential, especially in the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years. If you look at, Boondocks, Boondocks, the way it's drawn is heavily influenced by anime, which explains kind of the attraction that it has for black and brown folks to anime. This is kind of a stretch, but I remember, I'm going to sound like the old guy back in my day. The black and brown folks were heavily into a lot of the kung fu movies that came out of Japan, Korea, whatever, and it's almost the same kind of connection because those movies were so they just went straight for the action. They were emotional, but they were very dynamic, and you felt something after you saw it. So anime kind of has the same kind of feel. And I know a lot of my nieces and nephews are heavily into it. They love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, black, brown, indigenous people of color are into all sorts of things, but I think that creators all over the world underestimate just how much black and brown people consume not only anime, but just animation, how much we love stories and escapism and, just any kind of media that will, thrill us or represent us well. And anime is a really big part of that. So I grew up a big fan of anime. I'm still a very big fan of anime. I collect animation production cells, like of old animes. They used to be painted. Actually, all cartoons used to be painted. Basically, they would do the line art, then they would paint the cells, and do that kind of animation thing. And I collect those, and I love them. But it's so great. It's my favorite expensive hobby.
So tell me a little bit about how, like, if I want to get into it now, what can I, like, where would you want me to start? What would be an easy entryway into some of the books or even some of the shows?
I would first start off with what genre thrills you. There are all sorts of genres of anime and all media. So if you're like sports. There's sports anime. There's really good sports anime. If you are historical fiction, there's really good historical fiction anime. If you're just like, I just want high fantasy ninja crap, there's tons of that. If you want people competitively cooking, if you want people being in the Olympics, if you want people beatboxing, like if you want to see demons rip people apart, there's tons of that. So like, what is your genre that doesn't fail to, thrill you?
Yeah. And go, you want me to literally answer that question or just
literally answer Please do.
So like, I think for me, I want to be, okay. So have you watched Invincible?
No.
Okay. I would say a superhero kind of drama, where it's still like, they're exploring family life, but it's mainly, I did watch Dragon Ball Z when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Those, it's more something like that. I hate to sound basic and simple, but something that would be like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're still coming out with Dragon Ball Z. Or not Z, but like Dragon Ball, the current generation. My brother still is watching new episodes of that. It's so popular that they won't let it die. It's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
Akira Toriyama, I don't even think he has his hands on Dragon Ball anymore. I think it's just its own concept now, and it just lives. But so that is cool. Akira Toriyama has done other comics. For instance, Dr. Slump. I think he had his hand in Dragon Age, something like that. Dragon Quest. If you wanted, so you kind of like the superhero slice of life.
Yeah,
that's most anime.
Is it? Well, there we go. I just need to stop being lazy and go find some.
Superhero slice of life is most anime. There's One Punch Man. There's Detroit Metal City. Oh man. There's so many. Oh, I'm like vibrating right now. I'm so excited about everything.
I think that's I don't know. I think I asked that question for myself and also just so many other people who might be watching this that are like me. That's like, yeah, I hear people talk about it. And I think there's some people who will say they're into it, but outside of like one show, like Dragon Ball, Z, like that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you like Dragon Ball Z? Like, was it your thing?
It wasn't a thing. It was something I watched every Sunday morning before I got up and got ready for work for like about 2 years in a row. And then I was like, oh, I've seen all these episodes. And then it kind of faded away.
I want you to go watch Yu Yu Hakusho.
All right. I'm going to have to write that down.
I'll write it down.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's not going to be spelled right. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what I'll do is I'll have because you know what's crazy? All of my children are into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember like sounding stupid going to the store. I need a Cowboy Bebop poster and the kid, like they would just write it down and I'll be, I'll go in the store and get the poster or whatever it is they want, but I have no clue because I'm just the old man in me. I need to catch up and be in that world just because it sounds like it's interesting.
Yeah.
And you gave me a recommendation, not personally, but you said it in the panel. I've been hooked on Craig of
the Creek
ever since you said watch it. Have you ever, KV, have you watched Craig of the Creek?
Craig of the Creek is great. It's great. I have watched Craig of the Creek. I have.
And it's funny because I'm like, me and my wife are sitting there watching, no kids around. All of our kids are older. But even when the kids come in, they're like, oh, Craig of the Creek. And we all just sit down and watch it. Like that's... It's amazing.
I don't even know if like Cartoon Network has Craig of the Creek on on actual TV. It's like the last time I had cable and like saw what they were actually showing, they were showing a whole bunch of cartoons and none of them was Craig of the Creek. And I'm like, why? Like their most popular cartoons, in my opinion, are cartoons that don't even air. Like Steven Universe. I think they had like maybe 30 minutes of Steven Universe like once a week and you had to like go catch it. But it was like online. You could watch it there, but like it's not on prime time or anything. And same thing with Craig of the Creek. And I don't know why. They also have another show called Vincent and Valentino, which takes place in Mexico. Both of the Both of the main characters are little Mexican boys, and all of the cast is. And it's kind of like a more humorous, lighthearted Courage the Cowardly Dog, except for and it deals with like Mexican lore and mythos, and it's kind of like goofy creepy kind of, and I love the goofy creepy genre for children's media.
So were you gonna say something, KB?
Yeah, Cartoon Network. They're on this Rick and Morty tip now. That's all they play.
I've never been able to get into it. I still haven't watched it yet. Rick and Morty, not one episode.
I have watched it, and it is definitely not for kids. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know I watched Solar Opposites, and I think they said that's the same creators.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, the first season I was cool. Second season I was like, man, this is my kid. I did not.
Okay.
They showing this on TV?
So that's Adult Swim though. So
that's true.
For kid kids, they have kid stuff, but as soon as it turns 9 o'clock, that's adult programming, and things like Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty. That's when the kids are supposed to go to bed, but they stay up to watch it because it's good.
Yeah.
But technically, it's adult programming.
Yeah. And we would have too. We did the same thing when we were younger. We would have done the exact same thing.
I laugh at stuff I shouldn't laugh at. I'm like, I shouldn't be laughing at this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember like staying up till 2, 3 a.m. to watch Dragon Ball Z and Inuyasha and C-Lab 2021 when I was in like middle school.
I remember that one.
I'm staying up. I'm going to watch Daft Punk music videos and, all of the stuff that's on, like Samurai Jack and all the stuff that's on like Adult Swim.
So me being a little bit older, my reference for doing that same thing was totally different. One, I had Benny Hinn. I would sneak and try to watch sometime. Do you remember that? It was an old, exactly that. What? And I know, man. I don't know. And then of course, obviously, BT Uncut.
Well, of course.
Of course, Uncut.
Of course.
Because that's why we have trouble with patriarchy now, because Uncut shaped who we are, and that is not okay.
That is a sad state of affairs, sir.
It is. And the sadder part is I just told you I watched it, and I bet there's, what 2 songs just went in your head. And it's stuck in your head right now on the dance floor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. See, you went from Benny Hinn to BT Uncut, sir. That is quite the spectrum.
It is. That was what Stand Up Late for me represented back then. I wish there was cartoon. That's the problem with not having, not having fancy cable. Maybe I would have.
Fancy cable, huh?
Yeah, maybe it would have been different. But, all right, so back to this interview, because I don't want to go on a tangent too long. I want to ask you some of these questions before we start talking about like your career and some of the things you've worked on. What's been some of the issues for you on a personal level? Like watching these shows, we know representation is one of them, but what are some of the, I've heard you use the term like tropiness, like pointing out the tropes and different things. So what are some of your issues when it comes to the shows that you're watching, including the anime, including like the cartoons, the books, everything that we're consuming that you just love to consume? But what are some of your issues with it?
I get really close to the mic because this is one of my favorite subjects.
No, okay.
The first thing that jumps into my mind is Black superhumanism when it comes to
Okay. Let's talk about that.
to Black representation in the media. So usually, a lot of times, and this is not just anime, it happens in anime, definitely it happens in anime, but it also happens in Western comics too, where you got your token. And so we have like a whole bunch of, we have like a whole bunch of white people, sure, and we've got that one black guy, but that one black guy is 8 feet tall, and he's like 400 pounds, and he's all muscle. And it's a huge problem because people already have a huge problem thinking that Black people are tougher or have a higher pain tolerance or like me, I work in the medical field.
I would keep going. It claims that it still records.
Okay. So I work in the medical field, and also I am a therapist with children. And my child has been reported saying, like, I have to be rougher with Nikki because she's tougher than the other therapists, or her skin is actually literally thicker than the other therapists. And, we have to like battle for dominance every once in a while. But like, my little 7-8-year-old kiddo said that, and it hurt my feelings. I was like, I'm no tougher than anybody else. Actually, I'm pretty baby. Like, I feel pain and I get my feelings hurt. And if somebody pinches me, it hurts. My skin is actually not thicker. Let's go to Luke Cage. Huge, invulnerable, bulletproof. He came out at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it felt so good to see a bulletproof black guy just walking around and wrecking stuff and fighting the power, and nothing could happen to him. But that's not real. I'm just like, at one point I was watching this show and bullets were flying and glass shards were flying, and I'm just like, what if that was a regular guy? It's Luke Cage, but like all of a sudden I slipped out of my escapism and I landed in the real world, and I got scared. I'm like, what if somebody thinks that this is a regular person at any point and they treat some other Black person like that person? That's not going to go well for that Black person. Continuing on with Black superhumanism, I watched this one anime called Promare. And I'm sorry to drag Promare out there for all of you people who love Promare, because I love Promare also. Promare is this anime movie, and it's gorgeous. It's made by Studio Trigger, and it's about a team of firefighters taking care of these inhuman people who start, kind of magic fires. And it is so cool and it's beautiful. And the firefighter team, it's got like this group of like regular size, Japanese people, and then the one black guy who looks slightly less human than everybody else on that team, and also he's 9 feet tall. And at first glance, you're like, oh my gosh, there's a Black person on that team. And then he walks up from the background. What's the name of that phenomenon where you play with it's an optical illusion and somebody's further behind, so it's like a different size. And then he walks up from the background, and all of a sudden you see he's actually 10 feet tall. And he was taller than everybody else when he was 15 feet away. And then he walks up and he's super huge. And I'm just like, I love this movie, but I'm sad because why can't there just be like a short, scrawny black guy with gap teeth? Like, why can't there be just, I don't know, I don't want Black people to be the tallest person on the team anymore. I don't want them to be the tanks. I want Black mages. I want Black healers. I don't want them to always have to be the responsible person on the team. I want a Black goofy person that's not too goofy, but like goofy enough to humanize us. I'm tired of this happening. So that there's my superhumanism rant. I have 2 other rants that I really want to get to.
Yeah. I mean, well, we here for it. So, I mean, but so when it comes, that's one of your first things that you point out.
Yeah.
Let's talk specifically, because this particular episode, KB and I have been talking a little bit about women in comics.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you at with some of those issues that you see from that angle?
Okay, I'm sorry for people who I'm going to drag right now. But one of the tropes that I've been really sad about lately was in animation specifically, when you have your token black girl, like it's really rare when there are black women in animation. It's usually dudes, but like when you actually have your token black girl, she's got this raspy voice, like she eats cigarettes for breakfast. I am watching Wildcrats. We all love Cokie from Wildcrats, the one black girl on that team, but also she's got a voice like this. And I'm just like, why? Like, and like, not only is that, but like Susie from Rugrats. I don't know if these are all voiced by the same person.
Cree Summers?
They might all be voiced by the same person. They might not be. But I want to see some variation in the voices of black women in animation. Like, I love Cree Summers. Don't get me wrong, but everybody? I don't.
She doesn't have to be everyone.
She don't gotta be everyone. I have a relatively sweet, belle voice. Not everybody needs to be her. I want more diversity in that. And I watch a lot of children's media, so much. I watch so much children's media, and I see the one black girl, and inevitably her voice comes out, and I'm just like, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what about other storylines, other tropes, like other things that come up in your consumption of media that you want to rant about, or you want to talk? I won't even say rant. It's just you're bringing some things to the light. What else you want to talk about with that?
Oh, yes. This is great. Thank you for having me on. So excited.
It's like therapy.
Yes. How many times have I ranted about this? Okay, so I also want to talk about how black men are very oftentimes perceived as a romantic threat, and how that's a bad thing. And like, not a bad thing. I would love to see black men get action in comics, but usually, okay, so there's a team of heroes. There's a black person on that team. He is either completely undateable and doesn't date anybody in the media, or he's got a wife at home and he's loyal, and so he's not a romantic threat. Or he is cyborg and is not a romantic threat because he is not human from the waist down. So we can talk about that. We can talk about the castration trope a little bit of the Jimmy Christmas trope. It's a hard subject, but I watch media, and whenever I see a black person, I want to see how much play they get. I'm completely shameless about it. I'm just like, here I am. There's another black person. Do they get play? I watched all of Young Justice. Okay, most of Young Justice, like the first two seasons of Young Justice. And I got there and I came for Aqualad. They made Aqualad for Young Justice, and I was so excited. And Aqualad was the one black person on the team, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, but still black. He was still ours. And he was, of course, the most responsible person on the team. Of course he was. And then he got no play. Like, he had a crush on somebody, but she chose somebody else, and he was, super devastated about it. Everybody in story got a whole bunch of play. Like, everybody was getting ass. Not Aqualad, though. He got, like, a kiss on the cheek one time on like, New Year's. But, like, it was a formality. It was not a romantic thing. And at the end of the first two seasons of Young Justice, in my imagination, a whole bunch of creators had to sit around a table and just be like, what are we going to do about Aqualad? Why we need to explain why he did not get play in 2 entire seasons while everybody else around him did. Like, Robin got so much play. Beast Boy got play. Like, everybody got play. All of the Arrows got play, but Aqualad sat there asexual throughout the entire comic or entire movie series or television series.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Okay. Yeah. And so they ended up making him gay. which I am queer myself. I don't have a huge problem with it, but I hate the fact that they made him gay as a scapegoat to explain why they wrote him into a romantically inaccessible corner. And so they came out with this awful comic explaining how he's been gay the whole time, and that's why he got no play. And then in Young Justice season 3, they have him romantically dedicated to another man down in Atlantis somewhere. I have not gotten that. I have not gotten that far in the show, but again, he is not romantically available because he's romantically loyal and taken by somebody who is not very important. So.
This is
wow.
It's so much to unpack there.
That's a lot.
So this is one of the reasons why we'll talk about this later because this is part of what you do. This is one of the reasons why they need sensitivity writers, right? Mm-hmm. Because they thought that was brilliant. They were like, we'll make him gay. And to make it authentic, we'll make sure his boyfriend's in Atlanta. Yeah.
Atlantis.
So, you said Atlantis. I thought you said Atlanta. Oh, my bad. I thought you said Atlanta. I was like,
Oh, it's not Atlanta? Okay.
No, she said Atlantis. Because when I thought she said Atlanta, I was like, well, there you go. He's had a secret boyfriend in Atlanta. Wow.
It's like they were checking all the boxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got the black thing down.
Oh, that's a whole other thing that we could talk about. Like, they want to get all of their diversity in their one disabled gay black character, while all of the other white characters are just like cis and straight and getting plenty of that. But then we have the one gay black disabled. They're like, there's our diversity. We did it. The one guy.
He's got all the boxes.
Off the shelf.
We'll give him all. Give it all to him.
Man.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think it is? Do you think it's just fear? You know how they say people fear what they don't understand. Do you think it's just like they don't understand it, but they're too scared to ask? Like, why do you think this is being repeated? Or do you think it's just comfort food? Like, do you feel like, hey, we're comfortable with this. This is the way we want it to be?
I have an answer.
What you got?
I believe that they don't want to piss off loyal white man comic creators who have been fans of series ever since they were children. And if they're, say, Spider-Gwen, or, you know, their redheaded beauty that they've been lusting after for 30 years ends up getting with a black man, they won't be upset. I feel like they don't want to upset white readers by having available black protagonist characters in their parties or around their women. I think that's what it is.
Well, so let me ask you this, because I see them go the route sometimes of throwing in, they'll throw in like a gay black woman before they throw in a straight black man. Do you think is it just literally, do you think it has a lot to do with just the fear of black men? In this particular, that's it.
I sat down and I watched all of Steven Universe. I feel like people are less afraid or yicked out of like lesbians or girl and girl action than they are of like straight interracial or dude and dude. I know.
It's getting real right now.
it feels so weird to say, but like in the history of Cartoon Network, what has made it into like the first queer content that has made it onto Cartoon Network has been girl and girl. Like there's a couple of moms in what's that show? Clarence. In the show Clarence, there are like two moms that take care of one of the little boys, and in Steven Universe, it's just full of lesbians, but like no gay men, not really. It's like lesbians and straight people, if I'm remembering correctly. I have seen all of it, but it's pretty much like women romance. And I'm still watching Cartoon Network, and I'm watching a lot of it, and I still have not seen any gay couples that I can remember, man couples or boy couples.
Well, it seems like most comics, the comic world in general, is always coming from a white man's perspective. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that they do what they do and how they do it. It's from their perspective. And you're right, Drew. There's kind of this thing that either they're scared to ask because they'll come off like they're insensitive, or they just don't want to ask because they just don't want to touch it. So,
I never, and this is one of the first times I've ever really stopped, because I've always had certain issues with children's television, but I think a lot of it was coming out of like my conservatives, like how conservative I was at one point in my life, but now I really think back on it, when you really point out the idea of Black men being a romantic lead, not being normalized on children's programming, like that is programming them for the rest of their lives to really just enter into a space where will there ever be a value on our lives in that way? Like, you're teaching young children, he's not like your dad. He is something different. He is, special. And Robert Townsend's talked about this for years. Like, we've seen it in movies. The whole basis of Hollywood Shuffle, that movie, where we know that there are certain roles we can play. We're either really mystical, or we're God, or we're a thug. Those are the two roles we can get. But to think about it being in the cartoons, that's just alarming, because it's like, man, we're going to have a group of young women who are going to grow up, like, especially when you think about like young white women who might grow up, and Black men will just be an exotic, stage. It'll just be that, and that's it. Like, but will we actually, will my son actually ever be viewed as a romantic prospect? Or I don't know.
And not a dalliance. There you go.
But so I want to go back to something you were saying about this, when it was just like they will throw as an explanation, as a cover up for their own issues, they'll throw a queer character in there. Mm-hmm. Tell me, how is that offensive? Is it just like, hey, I'm just glad they're doing it? Like, what is the perception on that from your vantage point?
Okay, so my vantage point is I am a connoisseur of queer media and literature, and I am queer myself. I'm also a person of color. I like to see media with queer characters in it. I prefer to see media with queer characters in it, but it depends on how it's done. Like with the Aqualad situation, it was really upsetting because they made him, in my opinion, they made him gay to explain why they didn't write him any romance for 2 entire seasons of Young Justice. It was an excuse. It was a grab for diversity. Now, if they had been cognizant of diversity and what they wanted to do beforehand, and they had dropped hints, or if they had written it into his character at all, or foreshadowed it, then it would have been less of a problem. If he was if he had some kind of episode that was him centered, that would have been different. So that's why the Aqualad thing upset me so much, because it was a scapegoat. But like, as for if it's written, and it's written thoughtfully, and it's written with a lot of love, then I know that I'm going to love it. But it can't be an excuse for poor writing. It can't be a cover up. Like, I wanted to talk about Iceman, but I don't know much about Marvel, so I really can't say. But there's a lot of queer literature out there made by queer creators, and it's made for queer audiences. And like, it's written from our perspective, by us, for us, and that's great. And I've done that myself too. And it is, I guess, am I making sense?
No, so far it makes sense. And even, you had mentioned the Iceman thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know much about who wrote it and where it comes from, but I I've done, it's made it into a part of my film where I've interviewed some people who are very upset. A lot of Comicsgate guys are upset because they feel like it's unnecessary and they don't want to see this character be gay, period, point blank. And they feel like they're pandering to the modern audience today that won't, in their opinion, won't even stay with comic books. They're just trying to trample on what they like.
I'm modern audience. Cater to me. Cater to me now.
But how do you deal with those people who are thinking? I mean, not that you have a responsibility to have to, but when you see those type of comments and when you see people who get upset, and the truth is, when sometimes they almost have a point, but you hate to agree with them because they're just horrible people. Do you find yourself in that boat sometimes when?
Not really. I surround myself with people who are on my side of opinion, I guess. And I have an answer for you. If somebody came to me just kind of like they made Iceman gay because they're trying to pander to an audience that aren't going to stay with comics, my answer is just like, who cares? Like, did you care about Iceman before he was gay, or do you only care because he's gay and you came running to say the antithesis of what they were going for? And if not Iceman, then who? Who would you like to be gay? Who would that be okay for? And of course, the rebuttal is probably going to be, why don't they make some new characters? Right,
exactly. That is the response. That is 100% it.
And then they did. They were bad. But also sexuality is fluid. Somebody can be straight one day and then bi-curious, then bi the next, or somebody could be I tried it. I was open-minded. I'm comfortable with my sexuality, and I have come to I've come to decide that queer life is not for me. But honestly, you don't have to understand it. You don't have to like it. Just respect it. And that's not only with comics, but that's with a whole bunch of identities that you don't know anything about. You don't have to understand it. Just respect it.
And the stories have to be good at the end of the day. They got to be well written.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the most helpful things about any story is that's always the forgiving part is if a story is really good and a character is flawed, sometimes all right, I'll stick it out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gotta be some effort in it. Let's transition to talking a little bit about you and your career. I keep this behind me. Typically, you get a chance to see this on mostly every episode. It's usually right back there. I put Batman in its place this week just to make you happy, KV. But it's not your Batman. I want to point that out to you. That's Black Batman.
Whatever, bro.
You like white supremacy Batman.
Hey, don't put that out there like that. What you trying to do to me, man?
White privilege is my power, Batman.
Sir, you're going to leave Bruce Wayne alone. He's done nothing to you.
He wouldn't leave me alone if he saw me walking down the street in an alley. He wouldn't. He would beat me. You know he would.
Yeah, he would.
But, yeah.
You work for Clayface.
Yeah. So tell us about Just a Poem. This is your work that you put out. Tell us a little bit about it.
I would love to. So Just a Poem is a short little 12 page comic. I don't remember. But I really love font and typeface. It's my thing. And in my head, font and typeface kind of have like personalities, and like based on the history of a font and the way the font looks and how the font makes you feel when you read it, I turn those fonts into people, and I have them going around doing crazy slice of life and justice stuff, and I love it. It's my own little niche thing. My target audience, I guess, is graphic designers or anybody who likes font and knows the history of it. Just type geeks. But so I made a comic called Just a Poem. I took a class in Portland by Dr. Bell, and it was just kind of like a intro to making comics class. And I sat there, and throughout the class, I made just a poem for the class. And we put all of the comics in a compilation, and we made like this little anthology called Spokes, and it was great. I even chose the name of Spokes because I'm cool. But the comic means a lot to me, and my characters mean a lot to me because representation means a lot to me, and I want people to feel represented. And this is a very big feeling for me. As you know, this is one of the reasons why I started. I mean, like, I've always drawn, but this is one of the reasons why I got excited about drawing. And this is one of the reasons why I have 200 OCs and an Excel spreadsheet. And this is one of the reasons why I like to be on podcasts, so that I can like scream and get my comics into the hands of young folks, is because I want young kids to have access to comics that represent them. Not only that, but queer, person of color comics that represent them. Can I tell a small story?
Oh, yeah.
Yay.
It's your world.
So I live in an apartment complex, and there's like these couple of kids that run around screaming all the time. And they are like 10 and 13 little girls. And they were like, "Hey, Nikki," we know each other, my name, I guess, because I love kids. That's just how I am. And so like I started talking to them, and I sit down, and they're asking me all of these questions. Everything from like, who are you dating? And can we see baby pictures of you? And they're like so interested in me. And eventually I get around to, I make comics. And they're like, can we see? And I'm just kind of like, well, they're queer comics. Are you okay with reading that kind of content? And they were just like, well, actually, at school, I have some queer friends, and actually, I wouldn't mind dating a girl myself someday. And that's the 10-year-old. The 13-year-old is just kind of like, I am not into that. I'm just kind of like, cool. You don't have to be into it. Just respect it. If any of your friends come to you with an identity like that, and she's like, cool. It's not from me, but I will respect and love my friends. And I'm like, cool. You and I are cool then. And so, I go upstairs and I grab one of my books. It's called Shout Out, and it's an anthology by a whole bunch of queer artists and writers made for queer youth. And a lot of the characters are people of color. A lot of the creators are people of color. And we have identities from asexuality to spirit to, transgender identities to just all sorts of identities in there. And it's so cute and cool. And so I bring it downstairs, and this girl holds it like a bar of gold. And she's this young little like Latina girl. And the little girls are like Latina and Black. And she's just like, I'm going to read this tonight. And I'm just like, it's a long anthology. And she's just like, nothing will touch this, not even dirt, not even my brother. I will hold this and I will read it, and then I will give it to my friends so that they can read it, and we will talk about it. And I'm just like, my expectations aren't that high because she's 10.
Right.
And she finds me today. Actually, I'm taking my stuff to the laundromat or to the laundry room across the apartment complex. She's like, Nikki, and I'm like, yes. And she's like, I read it. And I'm like, the whole thing? She's like, yes, I loved it. yours too. I made a comic about asexual necromancers, and asexual necromancer and a asexual mage, and it was really cool. And she's just like, I really liked yours. I think I have a friend who's asexual, and now I have terminology for that, so that now that I can find community for her. And like, I loved all the stories, and she's like sitting there talking to me about it, and I'm just like, I'm so glad that I went and I gave you this book. It's like a $30 book, but any like young kid, I just like throw it in their hands for free, because like the feeling I get when they come and like show, like they have a face, and it's like I've seen myself represented well, and I'm excited about the content, that it's a face. It's a face of pure excitement. And I was like, oh, that was worth like a $30 dip in my, comic stash. I'm so happy that this little girl like read my anthology, or the anthology that I participated in, and like she's going to show her other queer friends. And honestly, I hope it gets into the hands of the girl who doesn't identify as queer, so that maybe like it will normalize the experience a little bit for her. And she can, instead of saying, I don't understand it, so I don't really like it, to being more like, I do kind of understand it because I've seen some stories, some first account stories of it, and so I understand it a little bit more. I can't say that I don't understand it anymore, and I respect it more because it's normalizing now. And so, like, that's exciting. So, like, when I made just a poem, I had that in mind. I really wanted to have two Black men be romantic with each other. That was the goal. That, like, how often do you see that other than Moonlight?
No, that's not a no.
No, I wanted to have two Black men just be tender with each other, give each other a rose, write rap poems together, be in the recording studio together, just like being sweet and cute. And like it's like this tiny little coming out story of a rapper named Memphis, because Memphis is a font, who goes to Paris, and he like lives in the Bible Bowl, which is a like another word for like the Bible Belt. And he goes to France, and it's like more liberal there, and he sees like gender neutral bathrooms, and he sees queer couples, and he's like, wow, now that I'm not in the confines of like the Bible Bowl, I feel less afraid to like understand and know of these identities. And then he goes back to the Bible Bowl because he only visited France, and he's like, I'm home again, and I feel constricted, and I am queer, and I can admit this now, and it's hard, but also I'm an influencer, and so I think I'm going to come out to my fans. I'm gonna lose some, but also I might gain some, and the ones that I gain will like understand me and stuff like that. And this was before Lil Nas X came out. This was, I want to say, probably a little after Tyler the Creator came out. But like this, I want like a Black dude power couple. And my Memphis character was so afraid of like social stigma. He's like, rappers have come out before, you don't know their names anymore. Like they will get ostracized. I don't know if the world is ready, and like the people in the comic around him were just kind of like, nah, we're ready. Like just go ahead and do it. And encouraging him, they're like, if you are comfortable, go ahead and come out to your fans. And he does, and the reception is great. And that's the comic in like 12 pages.
Yeah.
That was the goal. That was the function of the comic. Black men being tender with each other, a tiny coming out story, and a positive reception of the identity. And
do you think that America's, let me not ask a pandering kind of question. Well, I'm just going to ask you the way I want to. Do you think America's ready, mainstream America, like middle America, that Bible Bowl you kind of spoke of? Do you think, and it doesn't matter if they're ready or not, I'm asking you, like, do you think they're ready for your books and the things you want to write about and the visions that you have?
I don't care. I want them to consume my media anyway. If they're not ready, I want them to be upset and ask themselves why they're so upset by a little 12-page comic. And if they are ready, I'm excited for them to be like, for it to get normalized and for, them to feel represented and stuff like that. I'm ready for people to be like just accepting and loving, and for people to feel free to be themselves and not have to like get kicked out of abusive families for identifying a certain way. I like, the more it's normalized and the quicker it's normalized, the better, because homophobia and transphobia and like all of this stuff, it's like, it's ruining families and lives. And I just really want people to be all right. I want people to be happy. I want people to love who they want to love. And I don't want people to hide or be uncomfortable and all of that stuff. So like, I want people to read the comic. I want them to do it.
Now, did you do, or was I just my research kind of wrong? Is this work yours? You can look over here before I say it.
You pulled up Derelict.
Okay.
And Derelict was a comic that I illustrated,
right,
but did not color.
Okay.
As a matter of, somebody else wrote it and I illustrated it, but then without my permission, they found somebody to color it, and the coloring is really bad.
Oh, okay. So you don't talk about it too much then, huh?
I suppose not. I mean, like, if you find the black and white version, then that's all me, and I'm very proud of that. But somebody took my black and white version and then colored over it and flatted it, and it just looks kind of murky.
Yeah. So I bring that up just to kind of say, like, what all is it? What does it mean to be in this industry? Because I knew that you didn't write it from looking at, but so like, what are all the different hats and jobs and titles that comes with being a creator?
Okay. Well, you said I was one of the first indie comic creators that you had on here?
Yeah, this is our third episode.
Oh. Okay. I'm happy to be here. Oh my gosh. So, as far as the hats of the creation of comics, first, you have concept. You have a writer and they write it, and hopefully with an editor they write it. Hopefully with a sensitivity reader they write it. And then after writing, it goes to pencils. Somebody sketches it up. After pencils, it goes to an inker. Somebody inks it beautifully. Or you can bypass all of that by just doing it digitally, but the process is still pretty much the same. You take your little stylus and then you sketch it up and then you ink it. After that, you color it. After that, you letter it. After that, you have a comic and you need to print it yourself and do some self-publishing, or put it on a website, or you find somebody to print it for you. So yeah, pitch it to Image and maybe they'll pick it up, or you'll pitch it to somewhere and maybe they'll publish it for you, which would be a lot of people's dreams. But not everybody wants to be associated with like a big comic creator company, and not everybody wants to be self-published because it's a lot of work. I feel like it's one of the most labor-intensive careers out there. Being an indie creator, because doing it all yourself is a lot and it takes a long time. And can you imagine just if you are a portrait artist, which means you draw like a picture per page, you can sell a poster of your art for maybe like $20 if it's really good art. But like, imagine paying $20 for a comic. People expect to pay anywhere between maybe $3 to $15 for a comic, but it's got like 600 pictures in it. It's like so much more work than a portrait that you're willing to pay $20 for because it's bigger. So it's like so much more work, exponentially so much more work than a portrait artist, but you make so much less. So anybody who is a indie comic creator is in it for the love. They are there because they like doing it. It is not a lucrative career. So that is pretty much the process. And also, if you are an indie comic creator, you need to decide if you want to do your comic for the phone format or for the comic format, which are complete different formats. I mean, you can like go onto like a digital software editing, art editing, whatever, and change comic format to phone scrolling format. But ultimately, phone comics and tablet comics are really popular. Scroll comics are really popular. And so you need to decide, basically, are you traditional or are you digital? And once you decide that, you're just like, are you going to do scroll comics or are you going to do comic pages? And then after that, you need to decide, are you going to professionally publish or self-publish is professional. So are you going to like big company publish or self-publish? And so like there's a lot of different little factions, but that's where comic creators live. It's easier if you have a team. So you have a writer and you have an inker and you have a sketch artist and you have a flatter and you have a colorist and you have a letterer and you all work together to get out a comic within a year. Or you are a personal comic creator and it may take you like 3 years to come up with your own thing because you have to do all of those jobs yourself and make 600 little pictures all by yourself. But those are the hats.
Man, that's a lot of hats.
It's a lot of hats.
You ever think about getting into the game?
Yeah, all the time.
That's a lot, man.
It is a lot. I actually did kind of come up with a little something, and I did work with a team, that put something together for me, and I actually had to learn how to write the script, which was a lot harder than I thought. I learned that this year. It's really hard because you got to have directions in your script, and you gotta set the tone. You got to describe the scene, but you can't describe it too much because you got to give the artist a little bit of room. There's a lot of work, and I only did like 5-6 pages. That was a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and when I got it back, I paid for someone else to take care of it for me. They gave me they penciled it and they let me see what it was going to look like, and then just like she was saying, that's just how it works. And once I got the full, comic book back, I'm telling you, it made my heart flutter a little bit. I was like, wow, that was in my head. Now look at it. That's dope. So it's possible, to get it done. It just takes work. And you got to love it because I paid like $800-900 just to get 6 pages done. So if you love it, the money doesn't really matter. It's just the feeling you get when you see something that you love in all of its glory.
I know that feeling. It's so good.
It is. It's a good feeling. I hadn't showed you yet, Drew, but it came out really, really good, bro.
We're gonna have a show about some of that, man. There's a few more guests that I want you to talk to first before you reveal yours.
Okay.
Because I'm excited. I'm super excited about it. But I knew that our guest today, I knew Nichole was one of the people I wanted you to hear from. Just like last week, we got a chance, or not week. I say last week like this show comes out
last
every
episode.
And on top of that, last issue, because we try to keep along with the comic book language.
Right.
But last issue, we talked with David Walker about, David F. Walker about some of those same things of like what it takes. And he's a mentor to a lot of people in the comic book industry.
Including me.
Yeah. And so it's like there's so much to be learned about like this casual thing that you would think, like people just throw away or just disregard sometimes. But it's a lot of work and a lot of love that is put into this. Nichole, before we let you go, do you got any projects that you're proud of that you are working on that you can tell us about, or anything that you've done, even if it's anything, if you were just inking or drawing something, or you were there when they came up with the idea and you want to tell us about it, if you did some sensitivity reading for them, any projects you want to let us know about, go for it.
All right. Well, I have been doing some sensitivity reading, and it has been a really cool. What's the word? It's been so cool.
Explain to people what sensitivity reading is, just in case. It's kind of common, you would think it's kind of common sense, but just in case.
Okay. So if you are so look at how much diversity there is in comics. Not much, right? Like it's there, but does it feel natural? Is there a flow? Is it good representation, or is it tropey and awful? The difference between the two could be a sensitivity reader. If you are a writer and you want to write somebody who is not like you, or an experience that you have not had, you may need a sensitivity reader. And what those people do is you write your script, you do your research, and you feel like you did a good job. You pass it down to you pass your script to a sensitivity reader, and they will read it, and they will give you ideas on how to better your representation, on how to make your characters and concepts flow and gel better, and they will keep you from looking like an idiot. Like if you do bad representation, they'll be like, oh, this is bad, you can't write that, that's offensive. And you'd think that it would be obvious, but a lot of times it's not. People who are not like you are more aware of the subtleties and racisms and marginalized areas that you probably haven't even thought of or fathomed, because that's not your world. You know your experiences, but you don't know theirs. And so they're there to help you with that. And I am a Black queer person of color, and I have sensitivity readers. Like for one of my next projects, I want to have an Indian protagonist. I don't know anything about Indian people. So I just kind of generally wrote an Indian protagonist, just kind of just treating her like a human being, not being a tropey, not anything like that. But then I went and I found an Indian sensitivity reader, and I wrote like a list of questions that I felt really stupid asking, but Google didn't answer my questions. Like, is everybody allowed to do henna, or is that a specific thing? Or I also have Indigenous sensitivity readers, because I'm not Indigenous, and I was just kind of like, what is that you wear called? And they're like, oh, it's called regalia. So like they give you terminology, they give you ways to, like, cultural experiences and rules and stuff like that. They answer your dumb questions so that you can feel more confident about the portrayal that you're trying to portray. And I love finding sensitivity readers. Sometimes it's hard because you approach people in the community hoping that one of them likes comics enough to let you pay them to answer your stupid questions. But you're paying somebody for their emotional labor to read your stuff and help you look good, basically. So yes, I have sensitivity readers, and I am a sensitivity reader.
So to go back, I'm sorry I sidetracked you. We were kind of closing up with your projects and anything you want to plug here. Tell us about any groups, anything that you just want the world to know about, that, our little space of the world, that maybe they don't know your space of the world.
Yeah. I did a project with Dark Horse, and I'm really happy. I sensitivity read one of their comics, and it'll be out next year. I feel like I saved them from a lot of very silly mistakes, and I'm glad that they had me read their Black protagonist experience, and I was able to help them out with that and help it flow better and help them with their dialogue and stuff like that. After that, I sensitivity read another comic. It's an indie comic, and it's so good. I'm really excited about that one. So I'm doing ones for I did one for Dark Horse. I did one for indie. That's cool. And now I will probably be slowly but surely working on my next project, which is going to be about more queer person of color necromancers, because I apparently am into that right now. But I do want to say, I want to normalize people taking breaks from creation and art. Throughout all of 2020, I didn't lift my stylus hardly one time. And now that we're into 2021, I am busy writing. I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm doing a lot of DMing. I'm playing a lot of tabletop games. And I'm really, really excited about it. And so it's not the art that I'm known for, and it's not the art that I'm like even like publicly proud of, but it makes me happy. And so yeah, I've been doing a lot of DMing. So if there are any creators out there who were not particularly prolific throughout COVID, I am here to tell you it's okay. Just do what gets you through this really hard time. And if you're not feeling creative right now, a lot of us comic creators are not feeling creative right now. So just do what you can, and it'll probably come back later when like things are better and you can see people face to face and you can get back into your groups and stuff like that.
All right. Well, man, KB, you got anything before we get out of here for the panel?
Oh man, this was very, very interesting. Appreciate your time so much, and I learned a lot today.
I'm so glad.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember the panel is just one part of the total podcast. You'll always get a chance to hear and see the panel set aside as a little separate thing because we have some long, in-depth conversations. And if we put it with the whole podcast, that would be a 2 or 3 hour, ordeal. And so if you're watching the panel, do know we have other areas of the podcast that we definitely want you to check out. And so right now we're about to actually transition into another section. KB, by any chance, would you happen to know what's next on the UnCaged podcast? He's pulling it up. I can see it in his glasses. But
you really gonna put me on the spot like that, bro?
It's time for our thought. It's time for our thought balloons. So this is the section of the show where we get a chance to talk about the things that are on our mind, and then we're going to give you.
You're right, sir. It is the thought balloons. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I and then we're going to get into our cliffhanger and let you know a little bit about the next guest we're going to have on the panel. Nichole, Dacky Comics, is that where they can find you online on everything, and they can see some of your work and keep up with you?
DAKKY Comics. Yes, I'm that everywhere.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.